what if Native Americans made even cooler civilizations? As you can see, the labels have been updated. Wait a second, no, these are the same old labels. And now there are new, and now you can start to see the new power balance. In the west, there are the Silex. In the Puebloan states, nothing has really changed. In the east, it's mostly the Haudenosaunee. Sorry for the stuttering. And in Mexico, it's everything. And there's also South America, where it's clearly Ishangshimu, Uchinsho, or Sana. By the way, hey, please check out the new series about a new fictional world, Tagoin. But anyways, let's get straight to it. So we start in the east. You see, the Lenape had been getting sick of bullying from the Haudenosaunee. They had been fighting the Haudenosaunee for year after year and continuously being embarrassed. They were slowly losing to the Mohawk when it came to control over this region. And so they decided to finally do something about it. They formed the Lenape state. A state whose entire job was to make sure that the Lenape people were safe from the existential horror that was the Haudenosaunee. Haudenosaunee really scary. It was basically what they were for. And the Lenape, almost immediately in 1350, went straight for a war. This war was to gain back the areas north in the Hudson. This war lasted through most of 1350 and was a fail. At first, they were doing pretty well. Well, the Mohawk population isn't that high, but then the Oneida army came in. The Oneida at this point numbered 500,000, and really there was nothing the Lenape could do besides build new cities. The Lenape made their cities with the same structure that the Haudenosaunee did. Because even though Haudenosaunee may be scary, Haudenosaunee smart. And so it wouldn't be that bad if they could at least copy their system. And the Lenape also began working on a road system. This wasn't just a passion project, but rather a necessity because they needed to get food across the country. This road went from the southern parts of the country to the northern edge. And work in 1353 connected it with the villages on the southern coast. Altogether, the Lenape were coming together, and the Haudenosaunee were also really scaled. And so they've built a similar road system. Hey, the Lenape copied the Haudenosaunee, so why can't the Haudenosaunee copy the Lenape back? Sorry for the horrendous pronunciation there. This road system's goal was to, number one, take food places, and number one, take soldiers places. And it actually extended all the way southwards, even though there were no major cities easy to defend or feed. This was specifically so that they could continue fighting the Lenape. But there was one more use for the road system. You see, the Haudenosaunee were starting to realize that they could make a ton of money if they traded it with the states to the north. At this time, oats weren't too popular, so they still needed food, at least in the Korean Ottawa regions. So road, roads were built to major Cree settlements, and areas where the Haudenosaunee knew the Cree would probably be at. These roads were definitely not as dense, but they still were there. And the beginning of a golden age for all or the Northeast began too. You see, the Lenape, he wanted to spread two things: a hate of the Haudenosaunee and trade. And so they began working on trade connections and by sea for more trade, and also to maybe you do a coordinated strike in case, say, the Haudenosaunee get any ideas. This trade system linked up with the areas run by the Pequots, what's the Massachusetts, and the Naranga, and other tribes. I don't know their names. But one of the main customers for stuff was the Abenaki. In return for corn very vital for running in the Abenaki culture, the Abenaki would give if lobster, something that was slowly becoming a delicacy in the Lenape, and was useful as a food that could be used during corn shortages. They also used it as to buy salt. Used this to buy salt up from the north. And then merchants on the coast would sell it at a higher price in the more inland regions, or basically genius marketing. This was the beginning of truly a golden age in the Northeast, as the Lenape had accidentally given all of their neighbors, besides the Haudenosaunee, who already had power, the capabilities to build large settlements and work on building countries of their own. Specifically, the Abenaki, the largest of all of these tribes. Also, the Micmacs are here. All of these cities most are serving as ports, except a few, specifically along the Connecticut River. Specifically running along the Connecticut River, allowing for trade to be put further inland. So altogether, the new northeastern trade system was a total success. Also, I forgot to make the road system for the Mesoamerica, but don't worry, that will be added in a further update of this map. And now let's go to the Cree themselves. In this golden age of the Northeast, one part of this region was left out. The northern Algonquins. Sure, the Algonquins, thanks to trade with the Haudenosaunee, were making more or urbanized settlements, but nowhere near the scale that you'd find further south. Until 1351, when some Cree dudes had the amazing idea of making a kingdom, specifically two brothers. They hated each other so much that the small state that they formed almost immediately ripped itself apart for a year until finally the younger brother killed the older brother and threw him into a river. Just truly delightful brotherhood, if I could say so myself. this state it was based around around what was called Old Circle City in the Cree language. You might ask, why is it called Circle City? Look at the lake around it. It's a circle. Do you understand shapes? I hope you do. And quickly, with this highly defensible old city, this little Cree kingdom began to grow. They were the kingdom of the East Cree, and for the Haudenosaunee, they weren't much of a worry, anyways. They still depended on on trade with the Haudenosaunee, and so there was no way that they could break away from Haudenosaunee influence and not starve to death. And the Cree knew this too, which was why they spent quite a lot of time to send Soul to occupy as much of the trade routes as possible, well, to take them away from the neighboring pesky tribes who could say try to stop the trade and take all the goodies for themselves. Because remember, these people are almost just like the Cree. They also need corn to feed their families. Now, let's leave the soggy northeast and go to the soggier northwest. Here are these Salish states were only becoming more powerful. With the Silex specifically, the king made sure to take his homeland, and second, and he also made sure to force the nearby Sliman, the only people who are currently challenging Silex's rule under the bus by practically destroying them. This Sliman and people were totally destroyed in war, and by 1349 they had all fallen besides the far north to the Silex. The far north of the now the Solomon weren't very controllable, but the Silex were still more powerful. And once again, the Silex began experiencing a growth in cities, mostly due to the new farming of oats. Now, this farming wasn't very strong. They weren't growing it just tons of it. They were only growing a little bit because simply they didn't have as much large scale farming tools. That say Europe or Asia did. But still, this region was only getting more and more interesting. For example, all the Hadia to the north. Or is it? Wait, no, it's Haida. Yes, Haida. Sorry, Haidans. And the Haida officially made their own independent state. Number one, to get all the trade, and number two, so that it would be easier to stop the tons of people who just couldn't stop themselves from invading. The situation here was also feed everyone with it, and with the new crop we found, but on a still smaller scale, because the Hadia didn't have as good of a climate to farm. Unlike in most places, they could only farm for a few months at a time, and so their nation didn't grow that powerful. Oh. And let's see what happened in Mesoamerica. Well, it's all the foreshadowing for a war is only getting bigger. The Pesha were only getting more and more soldiers, and it was getting pretty clear for people for kingdoms like the Tenticlan, Colman, and Shuhakoka, the major powers of the region at the time, that if they didn't do something soon, the Pesha would be the conquerors of the region. Meanwhile, further in the middle of this, a small island was developing power. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please give me feedback